In the previous video, I was talking about one of the big issues we have when tackling mental health is the stigma attached to it. Because what comes to mind when you hear the word mental? And be honest, it's probably a fairly negative image, and it certainly was when I was growing up. If someone was described as mental, it meant they were dangerous or mad, or at the very least, a bit weird. If you haven't already guessed from my accent, I'm from Northern Ireland. I was born and bred in a little village called Ballycarry, which is 15 miles northeast of Belfast up the County Antrim coast. And growing up in a small village was actually quite idyllic. Now, we played outside most of the time. We were in and out of each other's houses and everybody knew everybody else. However, it was during my early years that the troubles really started to take hold and people stopped coming to Northern Ireland. After all, who wanted to go somewhere where there were bombs going off and people were getting killed? Thankfully, over the years, investment's been made in Northern Ireland and things are brighter. There has been a concerted effort to change the reputation of my home country. But for many long years, tourists were few and far between, as the stigma of the Troubles was hard to shake off. And anybody going to Ireland would still typically go to Dublin rather than go to Belfast. And it was back in 2019, I was going home to see family and I invited a friend who had never been to Northern Ireland to come with me. And I said I'd show her things like, the County Antrim Coast Road, known as one of the most beautiful drives in the world, and the Carrick-a-Reid Rope Bridge and Giant's Causeway. But I'll admit I was in shock for most of that trip, because instead of the windy, wet, it is Ireland after all, empty landscapes that I remembered, the places were heaving with people. Do you want a picture of yourself at the Giant's Causeway with no one else on it? Impossible. Do you want to cross the Carrick-a-Reid Rope Bridge on your own? Not a chance. And I thought to myself, what's going on here? Now, don't get me wrong. It was great to see people back in Northern Ireland, but this was unheard of. Well, I must have been living in a cave for quite a few years. Actually, what am I talking about? I was probably working at my desk all those years, because what I didn't realise was that all those places I had taken my friend to see, all those places that were just nice landscapes to go and visit when I was growing up, turned out they were actually set locations for the Game of Thrones. And that's why all those people were there. They were Game of Thrones fans. I had inadvertently taken her on her own personal Game of Thrones tour and saved her £600 into the bargain. And I really should have realised that, because a few years before my brother had sent me a photograph of this huge green screen that had appeared in a quarry in Macramore, which is near where he lives, and that was the main film set for Game of Thrones. Now, why am I telling you this? Well, it's all about perspective and reframing. For many long years, Northern Ireland was seen as a no-go area because of the Troubles. And now, people are flocking there because of Game of Thrones. Yes, the evidence of the past is still there. You can go and see the murals, you can see the peace walls, but it's been taken over by the much more positive impact of Game of Thrones. And if we in the business world don't take responsibility for reframing mental health, it'll just be like Northern Ireland during the Troubles. Everyone knows about it. There's a lot of talk, but no one's going there, and nothing changes. And the thing is, we all have mental health. And that's what I'll be talking about in my next video. So stay tuned.